France, 1780s. The French Revolution was a period of radical political and societal change in France. The revolution paved the way for most of the European revolution that happens in the later year around the world. It brought the idea of democracy into the modern society. So how did it start? Way before the revolution, the French people were divided into three socialist states, which was known as the feudal system, which existed in most of the European countries at that time. The feudal system divided the French people into clergy, nobility, and the commoners, and above all, there was the king. Feudalism was common in France before the French Revolution. The system consisted of the granting of land for return for military services. A peasant or worker received a piece of land in return for serving a lord or king, especially during the times of war. This caused an unjust system and people started to question as enlightenment grew. Hey Dave, do you ever wonder why we even doing this? I mean, we're farming right here and we don't even get half of the harvest. Everything goes to the king. And the land, it ain't even ours. Come on, Jeff. You wanna die or something? They protect us, ain't it? But it's not even worth it, is it? We're suffering. We don't even get the fraction of what they eat. We're suffering. So what are you gonna do about it? Kill the king? Rage against the system or something? Oh my god. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? No? So as of 1780s, when France had an economic crisis, France's costly involvement in the American Revolution and the extravagant spending by King Louis XVI and his predecessor had left the country on the brink of bankruptcy. The monarch started to charge taxes from the commoners. This made the life of the commoners more harder. 2 decades of poor harvest, drought, cattle disease, and skyrocketing bread prices had kindled unrest among peasants and the urban poor. This led to an act of resentment, and riots and protests started to begin. So fast forward to the 14th of July, 1789. The Bastille fortress was stormed by angry revolutionaries. This ended the old monarch, and this day became the Independent Day of France, which is now celebrated as the Bastille Day. Shortly after, the Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen was set by France's National Constituent Assembly. The basic principle of the declaration was that all men are born and remain free and equal in rights, which were specified as the rights of liberty, private property, and resistance to oppression. The radical change. April 1792. The French were losing badly in their war with Austria and Prussia. The radicals believed that if they lost the war, they would be punished and the monarchy and the ancient regime would be put back in place. There was a political unrest. So there was an internal bloodbath with the counter-revolutionists and the Parisians. The royal residence in Paris was stormed by the Jacobins. The Jacobins were a group of revolutionaries and the king was arrested on August 10th. The Legislative Assembly was replaced by the National Convention, which proclaimed the abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of the French Republic. And on January 21, 1793, almost a year after, King Louis XVI was condemned to death for high treason and crimes against the state to the guillotine. His wife Marie Antoinette suffered the same fate 9 months later. The Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror, commonly called the Terror, was a period of the French Revolution, when following the creation of the First Republic, a series of massacres and numerous public executions took place. It was a 10-month period in which suspected enemies of the revolution were guillotined by the thousands. Many of the killings were carried out under orders from Robespierre, who dominated the Draconian Committee of Public Safety until his own execution on July 28, 1794. The convention charged Robespierre and his allies with crimes against the Republic, and they were accused, condemned, and guillotined within 2 days. And this marked the end of the Reign of Terror. The end of the revolution. On August 22, 1795, France's first bicameral legislature was approved by the Constitution. Executive power would lie in the hands of a 5-member directory appointed by the Parliament. The Royalists and the Jacobins protested the new regime, but were swiftly silenced by the army. After 4 years of power by the Directory, there was another financial crisis and inefficiency, and above all, political corruption. So the power was handed to the military generals. In 1799, when a military commander, Napoleon Bonaparte, took over the French legislature by staging a coup d'etat, declaring himself the emperor, the event marked the end of the French Revolution and the beginning of the Napoleonic era, in which France would come to dominate much of the continental Europe. The French Revolution had a crucial impact on Europe and the world history. It led the foundation to the modern state governed by the people and for the people. The French tricolor was formed during the Revolution. It carried the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which is still imposed today in a modern society. And that's it, folks. Merci. Au revoir.